Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 202 of the All Dolphins podcast. Yeah,
What?
that's it. Every time we say those big numbers, it goes, whoa, 202. On this, Thursday, January 18th,
Getting ready,
2024.
getting ready for my history lesson here. Let's
There
go.
you go. Yes. Today, for the season corresponding to the episode number, it's going to be 2002. That was a promising season that went south. You want to talk about late season collapse? Holy moly. So this was a season where the Dolphins had made the huge trade in the offseason, traded 2 first-round picks, one of which was a conditional one, along with a 4th-round pick, and they got like a 4th-round pick in return to the New Orleans Saints for Ricky Williams. And Ricky Williams was every bit as good as advertised that first season, where the Dolphins rushed for 1,853 yards.
Damn, how'd you remember that number? How many touchdowns? Let's
I
check
want to
your.
say 18, 16, I think his first year, or 16 or 18.
It was
Whatever.
16. It was
Okay.
16.
Um,
17 all total.
There you go. And I remember that number because it's a franchise record. It shattered the team record, which at the time was 12 something. And the one that's come closest since then was Ricky Williams the following year. I mean, absolutely brilliant. The Dolphins were rolling. They were 5-1. Sunday night win at Denver. First game in NFL history, I think it might still be, where each team kicked a 50-yard field goal in the final minute. Dolphins got the last one, 24-22. Unfortunately, Jay Fiedler broke a thumb during that game. Dolphins had to go to backup Ray Lucas. Didn't work out well. They went 5-4. Then they came down the stretch, needing a win in one of their final 2 games. Lost at Minnesota in a Saturday game, 13-7, I want to say it was, where Minnesota felt like had the ball the entire game. And then came that nasty collapse in the finale against the Patriots when they were up 24-13 with 5 minutes left. And basically, you want to talk about Murphy's Law from that point on. It was Murphy's Law, including a kickoff out of bounds. Patriots got the ball first in overtime, marched for field goal, ball game, end of season.
You know what's funny?
And
I started looking at rushing totals because I'm trying to figure out if that 2,502 yards was like the best in in franchise history. And no, in 1972 they ran for 2,960 yards, which
in
is
14 games.
unreal. I
In
didn't
14
even.
games, do the math. It's more than 200 yards a game.
Wow, that's impressive. Mercury Morris and Zonka were 1,000-yard backs.
Mm-hmm. And Jim Kick had like 600 yards or something.
521, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's quite impressive. And there I was about to crown this Dolphins team to be the best since 2002. But truthfully speaking, there's some Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka and Jim Kick years where they ran for way more than 2,500 yards.
And different era, obviously. And then they combine that running game with a very, very good bend but don't break defense. Very sound. Also very few penalties, and that led them to their record. So that was 2002.
Now,
Sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say today we're going to be talking about an offseason master plan for the Dolphins and whether they're rebuilding or reloading. Before we do that,
or should they be rebuilding or reloading? Because I think a lot of this comes down to fiscal responsibility. And
okay, but before we get to that, we have to address the news because we're all about. And I predicted before we started recording that Omar would be throwing his head or shaking or rolling his eyes, one of those, because we stay on top of every development with the team. We should mention that the Dolphins on Wednesday signed a player to a reserve future contract, wide receiver Matthew Sexton. If you've never heard of him, it's okay. He's never played a game in the NFL. First arrived in the NFL in 2021 as a rookie free agent with the Steelers, spent some time with the Patriots and the Chiefs, played in the XFL, I want to say it was. And these guys, by the way, if you look every year, and I did this at one point, these are guys to fill out your 90-man roster once you get to training camp. Generally speaking, the players who are signed to reserve future contract, it's usually one every 3 years is going to make the 53-man roster. And immediately the one who stands out as having a shot of doing that is Ethan Bonner, because maybe there was a little bit something there, but let's also not assume that it's automatic that, yeah, that dude's making the roster.
Yeah, I mean, Drew did say he needed to be in the race with the fastest players on the team during
Okay.
Hard Knocks. So
That's all great, but if he was so good, so promising, they would have signed him to the 53 last year. And I'm not saying there's nothing there. I'm saying there is something there. But again, the history of guys who were signed to those reserve future contracts is don't look at that. Don't look at anybody on that list and go, oh yeah, that guy's interesting. Oh yeah, that guy.
you know what? I personally believe it does benefit them to sign him the way that they did, just because you now own his rights for much longer than, let's say, you had signed him to your 53 and he stayed on your 53.
You could have
Because
signed him to a 2-year contract on the 53. You got him for 1 year.
2-year contract, but now he signs a 2-year contract, and it's as if his first year doesn't even count because he wasn't on a 53. He played 2 vested years. He played 2 games.
Not vested. He didn't play enough games.
No, I say he played 2 games, so he's begun the process of being vested. I think you have to play. I'm not even going to.
I think it's 4 games or 4 games on the active roster.
Yeah, 4 games on the active roster to get a
It'll
vested
be a
year.
1. There'll be a 1 on the roster next year.
Mhm.
And by the way, for those who are wondering, sometimes you see a roster and you see 1 as opposed to rookie. Correct. Rookie is a guy coming straight from college or has never been on an NFL roster. The 1 is a guy who's been on an NFL roster but didn't play enough game to get vested.
Mhm.
Let's
Let's
attack the topic at hand.
let's get to the topic at hand, which is whether or not the Dolphins should be rebuilding or reloading. And this is sort of uh, piggybacking on the apocalypse that most people have knew was coming, but didn't want to address until it actually arrived. Well, we're actually here now. We're at the off season where the Dolphins are going to have to do a number of things, restructuring contracts, waiving players, shaking down players, giving players new contracts, changing base salaries to roster bonuses. This is going to be a huge financial toll on the Miami Dolphins. I equate it to the equivalent of paying off a credit card with a credit card, and just basically transferring balances. And right now, if you follow my math here, because right now you're $41 million over the cap.
I got my calculator here. Go ahead.
Okay, you're $41 million over the cap. Okay. This is just what gets you to the starting block. Right now, you and a number of other teams are behind the rest of the NFL.
Can I interject real quickly?
Yes.
Can I interject? So if anybody's out there going, what Dolphins are 40, how can they be over the cap? Teams are allowed to be over the cap at this time of year. They have to be in compliance with the top 51 by the start of the league year, which is March 13th. Go ahead. Sorry. I wanted to point
Okay. So by March 13th, you're going to have done a number of business transactions, roster maneuvers, releases to get yourself under the cap. Okay. Now, you also will have to do certain things by specific deadlines, as if franchise tagging Christian Wilkins. Clearly, that's business procedure number 1. That's the first order of business for the Miami Dolphins, because you can't let Christian Wilkins be exposed to free agency. Otherwise, you might as well waive him bye-bye. So you're going to use the franchise.
Sorry, we both agreed that there's no way you do not franchise tag him, correct?
Yes, absolutely. There's no way you do not franchise tag him. And for those who are thinking that, oh, it's going to be so easy to sign Christian Wilkins to a multi-year deal, you've clearly never met Christian Wilkins.
And remember, he's very frugal. Here's the thing I would point out, though, and tell me if you read anything into it or if it's my conspiracy theory mind going haywire here. The phrasing he used, I believe, with Christian and with everybody else, was the term "he's earned the right to be a free agent," which is the exact same wording he used last year in talking about Mike Gesicki.
Okay.
Is it possible that he was suggesting that they're not going to tag him?
No, they can't. They can't not tag him. That would be.
I agree, but I'm not saying what they should or shouldn't do. Is it possible that they don't?
No, it's not possible that they don't. The only possible factor in my mind, and I think I said this to you yesterday, that they don't, is, he's always big whale hunting, and there are a number of teams that are always going to have to let Jalen Ramsey go just because they're in cap constraints as well. And that makes a talented player available to you for cheap. So let's say Aaron Donald is available for a 3rd round pick with the Rams. If you're Steve Ross, you're gonna want to do that. And then at that point, kind of who cares what happens to Christian Wilkins? Now, would I think that that's a wise move to do? No, but Dolphins have done a number of dumb things over the years that they feel is justified for the greater good. Also, um, he talked about trading away that first round pick. He was not committal on using that first round pick. And I get where he comes from, because if you, let's say, dangle a Patrick Surtain Jr. out there on the market for a first round pick, you don't think the Miami Dolphins are going to be putting in a bid?
Of course. Don't know
So
why Denver would do that, but yes, absolutely.
I think there's possibility that Patrick Surtain is on the market this offseason. I do.
To me,
he's going to be trying to get the highest paid contract in the NFL for a cornerback, and rightfully so. And if you can't get that deal done with Denver, you can absolutely demand that they trade you, because you're not going to play on your 5th-year option. So it's basically pay me now or move me for something that you can get an asset for, to a team that is going to pay me. And you know where the Dolphins stand in that situation. They're always going to be willing to pay you. Yeah. I think there are a number of, I'm still doing my look-see at what's available and what might come free in terms of things that might fall off a tree. And you know how Steve Ross loves finding fruit that fell off a tree. Not Steve Ross, but Chris Greer. So I think that there are going to be a number of scenarios that the Dolphins will explore, especially since he wasn't committed to using his first-round pick. I think he looks at the first-round pick as more of a poker chip and an asset than he does, oh, let me go get a good player with that pick number 21. And I understand, however, when you trade draft picks and you give big money contracts to the players that you've traded for, then you find yourself in a situation like you're presently in, where you have no talent in the back end of your roster, and you've just got a team full of high-priced, high-profile players that are really relatively expensive.
And then you have roster filler, and this is part of an all-in approach, as opposed to building it systematically with product development, so to speak, where you use a ton of draft, which is what they did at
product development. I like that.
Yeah, which is what they were doing at the beginning of this rebuild in 2019. Is they traded basically, all the big names for draft picks, accumulated a ton. They had 11 picks in 2020, including 3 in the first, 2 in the second. Again, a ton of picks in 2021. And the idea for sustained success is you nail those draft picks, and those guys become really, really good players.
And what has happened is they've hit on a lot of those draft picks, and now they're free agents. So,
well, no, the thing that happened also is then they went a different route with those guys, and then they started going big game hunting. Teron Armstead, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Bradley Chubb. That's 4 huge names, and the only one who didn't cost you, they all cost you a ton in terms of.
Teron is the only one that didn't cost you a draft pick.
And Ramsey's only a third. I have no issue with that. It's a third, and Hunter Long. No offense to Hunter Long, who just can't stay healthy, by the way. Poor dude. Feel bad for him. That didn't cost you anything, but Tyreek Hill cost you a lot of draft picks, and Bradley Chubb cost you a first-round pick.
All good players. I'm not saying one approach is right, one approach is wrong. In the most ideal scenario, whereas let's say for the Rams, for instance, they're taking the same approach. They're on those F them picks approach, but they also hit on their draft picks, which unfortunately that's not the case for the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, Dolphins do not hit on their draft picks generally.
Devon Achane they hit.
Okay, so you're batting 220. Great.
No, correct. No, the success ratio. And here's the thing: they only had 4 picks each of the last 2 drafts, and. No, I'm not joking. Literally 4 picks. And it's Channing Tindall, Eric Ezukama, Skylar Thompson. I forget who the other late round pick was Cameron Good. And then this year it's Cam Smith, Devon Achane, Elijah Higgins, who's on the Cardinals after being signed to their practice squad, and Ryan Hayes.
Yeah. Elijah Higgins actually played this year. I didn't know that.
He caught like 4 passes.
He still played. Julian Hill outperformed him, so I'm not
Correct.
saying one is better than the other. Julian Hill earned that roster spot. Man, I remember training camp when you were like, "Oh, this Julian Hill kid, he's pretty good." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And then he ended up being pretty good.
Did I say it like that?
Yeah, you said, "Oh, this Julian Hill. I see him making plays. He's flashing." And I was just like, "Okay, whatever, sure, yeah." And then Julian Hill makes the roster. Yeah, let's. But here's what I'm saying: when you're $41 million over the cap, you need to, and every fan knows Jerome Baker, Emmanuel Ogba, Howard.
I need to interject.
Yes.
Okay, because as you well know, there's no sense in, you can't do anything with X before it's supposed to 1, which means it doesn't get him under the cap by March 13th. Because in fact, I believe it costs the Dolphins cap space if you do it pre-June 1. So that it makes 0 sense. Whereas you save, I think, what is it, 11 million in cap space post June 1. So
yeah. So $41 million, you're over. Then we got to add the $19 million for Christian Wilkins franchise tag. And understand, the only reason I say you're going to have to use the franchise tag on Christian Wilkins is because Christian Wilkins is going to be demanding a $100 million contract. And you could squirm as much as you want. You're still going to end up paying him that. And I think you have to let the process play out from a negotiation standpoint and let the market die out before you make him the 3rd or 4th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. And trust me, it will happen because Christian is good business-wise like that. And he's really, as Chris Greer said, he gambled on himself and he won. There is no debating whether or not he won. He's going to get a Quentin Williams-esque deal because his play merits that. And then you need about $5 million for your rookie class, which obviously you could wait later. That's not even talking about free agents you need to sign or players you need to pursue, like a Derrick Henry or the big whale hunting that Steve Ross is absolutely gonna try to do. What happened?
Derrick Henry,
give you a little power run game.
We're gonna go back to that route.
So people like a certain guy who wears a Montreal Expos hat can stop saying that, oh, they're a finesse team. They're a finesse team. Add Derrick Henry, see how finesse they become. Yeah, I said it.
Argue that they were not a finesse team in 2023. Go ahead, argue it.
They were the number 1 rushing team in the NFL in yards per attempt.
That's got nothing to do with finesse. Stop it.
They can run inside if they wanted to.
Yeah, we saw that very, very.
Okay,
very
I'm not going to do it against Chris Jones. I'm not stupid, but
very consistent inside running game all season. It wasn't about always getting outside on the edge. Finesse. You can, Omar. It's okay. I won't think any less of you. You can say finesse.
Top number 4 in rushing yards, number 1 in yards per attempt. Okay. Cannot be finesse. Sorry. And when things went south on you, which everybody continues to ignore, defenses got the ability to change how they played you because they didn't fear Jalen Waddle. He either wasn't on
excuses. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Was it the case or not? Did you not watch Hard Knocks and see him limping around all practice? Okay, you could shoot a player up and get him to look somewhat relatively like himself on game day. But did Kansas City look like they feared Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill based on how they played Miami? No, they pressed.
Is that who they did not fear, or was it the ability to throw the ball down the field that they did not fear?
All right. So $65 million is exactly how. It's exactly how much you need to get to. I'm not turning this into a Tua fight today. Today.
Okay, we're not going to do that.
I didn't even
check out my analysis piece on Dolphins.com. Please go ahead. Check it out.
What's the headline? Tell the people the headline.
Dolphins need to keep their quarterback options open.
Which means what?
Do you want me to tell you the whole? Okay, no.
Which means what?
That means do not tie yourself to QB1 for the long term right now, because he's been good, but right now he's not been good enough. If your goal is just to make the playoffs every year and then whimper out, then cool.
What's he's willing to sign a $40 million a year deal?
Again, when's the out?
Oh, 3 years. Every deal is going to be 3 years.
No.
So instead,
No.
you're just willing to commit to 2 years, which is the 5th-year
No,
option.
I'm willing to have him play on the 5th-year option and reassess next offseason. If he balls out and produces in big games, which he has not done, then you pay him what that kind of player becomes worth.
I am just so tired of every single conversation about the Dolphins coming right back to Tua. He was not the only problem. Was he the answer?
I never said he was. There's bingo. That's what you said. There's the answer, and he wasn't the answer. And if he's not the answer, why are you doing this?
We're not arguing. I said make him play. I said offer him 70 cents on the dollar, make him play on 50, make him play on 5th-year option if he doesn't want to do it. We're in agreement there.
No, you don't sign him for.
So you just say, no, I'm not signing you to nothing. Play on your 5th-year option. And that's how teams behave when it comes to a quarterback.
Again, it's about the team. It's not about the one player. They made Christian play on his 5th-year option. Okay, make Tua gamble on himself.
But they treat quarterbacks differently than they treat every single player on the roster.
That's fair. Again.
And you're going to build him up as high as you have built him up, and then say, you know what? We talk all this great stuff about you, but you know what? We don't really believe in you because we're going to make you play on your 5th-year option.
No, that's not it. They have been pumping his tires from the time Mike McDaniel got there. I mean, at every turn, and which was all great and dandy. The results have not been there. Tua, we love you. We believe in you. Unfortunately, these are the facts. We aspire for more than just getting into the playoffs, and we need to be convinced that you're the guy. We hope you understand. Play on your 5th-year option. Deliver. We'll take care of you.
Okay. And even though it could be a mechanism to allow you to create cap space that allow you to continue to ball out, you don't care. Just
because to me, if you're extending your quarterback strictly because you put yourself in cap hell, that's bad management. That's not a reason you extend your quarterback and shackle
you. You act like they do good management.
No, they don't. And they've also, with all due respect, this is an organization that's kind of fumbled at the quarterback position for
2 decades. Yeah.
Okay. And I see some fans who push back, and one of the arguments is he's the best quarterback that we've had since Dan Marino. Why would you turn away from him?
Facts.
Without question. But do you want somebody who's the best quarterback they've had since Dan Marino when the bar is really, really low, but can't get you to legit contender status? Or is the bigger goal get that Super Bowl? I think Stephen Ross, if I were to sit down with him, I'd tell him, Steve, what is it you want? You want a Super Bowl? Or you want to just make the playoffs every year? And I bring up Jay Fiedler in the analysis piece. And since I know you're a guy who loves one-loss record, Jay Fiedler's one-loss record in his first 4 years with the Dolphins, winning percentage blows away what Tua has done the last 4 years. And the Dolphins still went out and traded for AJ Feely, which that's another mistake in itself. But the point was they clearly saw, we're having a lot of team success. We're not getting anywhere in the playoffs with that dude.
Absolutely. And the 49ers took the exact same approach and traded up with Miami and drafted a quarterback. And then that quarterback didn't pan out and they found Brock Purdy. They're lucky. Miami has not been that lucky. But anyway, let's
again, and Brock Purdy's a different discussion we can have when we talk about the playoffs, because I'm of the opinion that Brock Purdy's a very good quarterback. But this idea that, wow, look at his result, look at everything he did. Again, he's in a massively favorable situation. And if you ignore what's around him, I don't know what to tell you.
And you're calling him a system quarterback, just like you're calling Tua a system quarterback.
No, instead of phrasing it like that, I'm going to say he is in a situation that's more favorable for the quarterback than practically any other one. I love it when you do that. Than any other in the NFL.
You're saying he's a system quarterback. You could just say it.
That's cool. That's fine.
And I never knew when the word or the term system quarterback became so offensive to everybody, because I love system quarterbacks. Tom Brady was a system quarterback. Aaron Rodgers was a system quarterback. Hell, Brett Favre was a system quarterback. Drew Brees was a system quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger was a system quarterback. As long as the system works, it's great.
Correct. And to me, the gauge in evaluating a quarterback is always how many quarterbacks can you put in there to have results similar, and then what happens to your quarterback if you put him in a different situation, and how does that look? And again, to me, Brock Purdy, and it's not so much the system itself, is a talent around him, which is ridiculous. That's a conversation when we do the playoff show.
Yes. So here's my thing.
Go ahead.
And getting back to the organic original debate that we had before we got sidetracked by Tua talk.
Which we always do. Just read the analysis story.
Here.
I'd like to think it's very good, and it's got nothing to do with the fact that I wrote it.
Alldolphins.com. How do you get to $65 million without gutting your franchise? And this isn't $65 million and we're gonna spend. No, this is $65 million just to get back to where you were with Christian Wilkins. Not Rob Hunt, not Raekwon Davis, not Connor Williams, not Deshaun Elliott, just to get back to your roster with Christian Wilkins. How do you get there? And would you look at this as a better situation to say, hey, we need to be rebuilding. We might need to be starting over, as opposed to doubling down and pushing that credit card debt even further?
Again, yeah, as I said, I think they're too far in. And here's the thing is
too far in to turn back.
Too far in to turn back at this time. I think they need to ride out until they get the contracts are easier to get out from under. Because again, if we talk about, well, you're gonna hear this, but it's not based in reality. Like, well, how about you trade this guy, that guy, that guy? When you trade them, that's a massive cap hit anyway, because the signing bonus, so you're responsible for it. So it's not as, for example, like trading X is the same cap ramifications as if you cut them.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't work like that, and they have too many guys.
I think it's even a worse situation than if you cut them.
They have too many guys where they're locked in without an out just yet. I think with a lot of those guys, as I remember looking at the individual contracts, the outs come after next season. So I think they don't have a choice.
And understand when you extend, because we had Kyle Krabs on the Joe Rose show this morning. He does Locked On Dolphins, another podcast out there on the podcast market. And me and Kyle have had this back and forth going back to the offseason when I first led people to, hey, you're going to be in trouble next offseason, and everybody's like, I don't want to hear that. Don't tell me none of that stuff. And his whole thought process was, it's just easy to create cap space. Let's just extend Teron and Chubb and Tyreek and these re-sign these guys. Oh, you're running back. We'll be good. And it's not as easy as you think it is. And a lot of times, a lot of those decisions, when you extended Teron, you committed to this season, and you don't realize that. But you committed to this season by restructuring Teron's contract. Mm-hmm. This season was not initially guaranteed. Now it is. And same thing with Tyreek. Not that you're trying to get away from Tyreek, but if you extend Tyreek's contract, you're going to be adding years to his deal. And I'm in favor of that because Tyreek has already proven he's an upper echelon player. But as you mentioned in the last podcast, eventually he's going to get injured and aged and slow down. I'm not worried about that for the next 2 years, but it is a factor. What'd you say?
I said not the next 2, but if we're talking 4 years down the line.
Yeah, I ain't worried about 4 years. The fourth year, the third year, after 3 years, it's not guaranteed. Yeah, I ain't worried about that.
But if you restructure him, then you're and the other option is always to turn salary into like signing bonuses and all that.
No, but that's much like more of a commitment because then
and it's also more of this. And then as long as you have Stephen Ross is okay.
You got to say this. What this is more of
shelling out money.
Yes.
Show me the money.
For the people not watching.
Oh, good point. Always forget about that. I apologize to our audio listeners. Yeah, I was making the shelling out money all over the place.
It's more of like a credit card to swipe. It's more swiping and yeah.
Actually, you know what? We're in 2024. It's more like Zelling or Venmoing or Cash Apping.
Pretty much. I when I look at this situation, and this is what I wrote about earlier. I've been offended, truly been offended by Chris Grier acting as if it's nothing. It'll be easy to do. It's easily managed. And that just hasn't been the case. And in fact, this team, I've covered this team for 15 years. They've never been over the cap. They've always been fiscally responsible. They've always kept money for a rainy day and then found ways to create more cap space to go shopping. At this point, you're just creating cap space to get you back to the status quo. And you can make the argument that the roster that the Dolphins had in 2023 will be the best it ever is under Tua Tagovailoa, as the quarterback. Just because once you start paying the quarterback astronomical numbers, you're gonna have to be living on ramen noodles and and beans and franks. And that's going to be the rest of your roster. So this roster is either going to be made up of draft picks, and we know the draft history with this team, so it's not, or it's going to be made up of veteran, injury-prone free agents playing on one-year deals for minimum or relatively close to that. And there's no shame if that's your roster, but you got to know what it is. And then when guys get injured, say la vie. It is what it is.
And so it's a lot tougher to compete for a title when you have that kind of roster as opposed to good depth everywhere.
Yeah, good depth everywhere and building it the right way and building it organically. But then again, you have to have confidence that you can build it the right way and build it organically. And truthfully speaking, I don't.
No, and this is where, and I'm not gonna like worry about the 6th and 7th round picks because those guys are like, but this is where, again, it's 4 picks in the first 4 rounds the last 2 years, and you've gotten something out of one of them. I mean, Ezukama showed some flashes. I mean, he looked really good in training camp his first year. Had some flashes where they were starting to use him like in a Deebo Samuel type of way, and then the neck thing comes around. That you got to get something. I mean, I don't know if the ship has sailed, but it'd be nice to get something out of Channing Tindall, and next year to get something out of Cam Smith because you got nothing out of the rookie 2nd round pick at corner when you could have used a cornerback help.
Perfect example of where you've fallen short on this roster is now if you're going to cut Jerome Baker, who's had a relatively steady 7-year career at the Miami Dolphins as a starting linebacker. If you're going to cut Jerome Baker, it would be ideal if you had a Channing Tindall to step up and contribute and replace him as a starter. There isn't a single person in that organization in Miami Gardens who has confidence that Channing Tindall could step up and be a respectable starter. If that were the case, he would have been in there at some point this season. Hell, I believe they'd play Calvin Munson over Channing Tindall. That's just where you were. And then, okay, you want to replace Xavier Howard because you don't want to pay him $18.5 million. Totally understand that. Elite cornerbacks get paid $18.5 million. I'm not saying that Xavier is not elite because I still think he's one hell of a cornerback. But if you want to trim that roster and trim that salary, it would really be great if Cam Smith had done something, had proven himself, had played 300 snaps. But no, instead you chose to play Eli Apple. So maybe the plan is to bring Eli Apple back as one of these veteran minimum guys who are just going to be, making, filling your roster with a 1-year, $2 million contract. So it's going to be tough sledding. Obviously, we both agree that the Dolphins are going to run it back. They're not going to reset. They're not going to rebuild. They're going to just reload and try to shoot these blanks little bit. Yeah, I said it.
Okay, I know you said it. Okay.
I mean, they became blanks at the end of the season, and I am at the point the way you played against Baltimore and Buffalo and Kansas City, which none of their quarterbacks are going anywhere. None of their head coaches are going anywhere. You're going to have to get through them to get to where you want to go. And right now, based on how you played, you're not in any of their leagues now. And I know you had injuries, and I know you had all kinds of adverse situations and circumstances, including the weather, but ultimately you still got to beat them. And I don't see how that happens right now.
And to me, this is where had the Dolphins had success earlier in the year, because the injuries were absolutely a factor down the stretch. And I never said they weren't. And I just don't want to hear it's the only reason they lost, but absolutely they were a factor. This is where had the Dolphins been more competitive early in the season or won those big games at Buffalo, against Kansas City, against the Eagles, I'd feel a lot more confident right now. Heading into the offseason and next season as to what this team can be. But yeah, the bottom line is they don't have a choice. It's one more go, and then next offseason it might get blown up. If the season is not good, I think it very well could get blown up next offseason, and then we'd be looking at a rebuild. Certainly, probably not in the same vein as the 2019 rebuild, but there would be a starting over feel to it.
Yeah, a starting over feel that also might include a new GM. Personally, that's just, I'm sorry, you can't orchestrate this rebuild, have it done for 6 seasons, have Steve Ross continue to write big fat checks, and then not deliver a playoff win.
Yeah.
So this is where we are as a franchise, and unfortunately, it's going to be, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it's going to be a very interesting offseason because Steve Ross likes to win the offseason, and he likes to be competitive, and he likes to go big whale hunting. And Dolphins got a lot of work to do to put themselves in position to actually be aggressive in terms of rebuilding this team. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We will be here all offseason. We're helping you wrap up, analyze, dissect what's going on. You know how to find the work, alldolphins.com. Poupard has a good piece up about Cam Smith and how challenging his rookie season was, even though he said it was great, which I was like, man, are you delusional? Yes. But you can find it on alldolphins.com. You know how to find the podcast audio platform. Just search All Dolphins and you'll find it. And you know where we are on YouTube. So hopefully you'll check it out. All offseason will be here. So we'll see you tomorrow as we analyze the playoffs and what lessons the Dolphins can learn from it.
There you go.
Excellent. See, I caught it. I paid attention.
Good job.